What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Kojay's Corner. This is my podcast, and I'm excited. We've dropped 2 episodes today, one in the morning and one right now live. If you're first time here to my channel, it is a variety channel. I cover a vast majority. Wait, that's not the word. I also have issues talking, but I try. It's a variety channel. I cover a bunch of stuff, movies, video games, content, and this podcast is special because this is where I get to voice my opinions, tell stories, bring people on, get to know them, and just have a good conversation that's beyond all the entertainment stuff, where we can tackle any topic that is crucial to anything, really. It could be personal, it could be political, it could be a reaction to what's going on, anything really that we'd like to share. And I like that because it's more than entertainment, because we do have to step away from fiction and face reality sometimes, and maybe we could have some revelations that might help someone down the road. But anyways, that's my radio podcast show. I'm very happy to have you here, and I'm very excited for this episode. I have a very special guest, her first time here. She's been on other shows as a host and co-host, but this is her first time being the guest of honor. So I'm very happy to bring to the show Heena Lotus. Welcome to my podcast and channel. Thank you for being here. How you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm super humbled and honored to be on your show. I know we were kind of talking about collaborating for a bit, and I know you kind of give your platform to people who are doing big things. Not to say I'm doing big things yet, but inshallah, I'm headed that way. So thank you for allowing, my voice to be amplified on your show.
Oh, I think you're doing great things, because I was doing my homework, catching up on your stuff, and you speak so. For people like me, where I feel like my IQ is about like room temperature, it's very. I like the eloquency of what you cover, and the intelligence and the importance of what you cover and express. So please, how did you get into podcasting, and introduce us a little bit more about you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Heena Lotus. I am a independent journalist. I'm also a geopolitical analyst. I do cover things outside of geopolitics. I like to focus on social justice, human rights, culture, social issues as well. And then I also like to discuss religion from a limited perspective. By no means am I a scholar or anything like that. But I do think it's important to be an ambassador of your faith. I am a Muslim. I am still learning every single day. And so the best way, in my opinion, to spread Islam is by example, by adab. It's something that I'm trying to encompass in the podcasting world. And how I got into podcasting is actually a very interesting question. I want to say about a year ago or so, I went to an organizing event for Palestine. It was my first one in the local Tampa area. I was kind of put into a random, like how you're supposed to like huddle in different groups and come up with ideas. And someone heard me speak and was like, "Hey, you're very intelligent. I'd love to have you co-host a show with me." At the time, I was really nervous. I was like, I don't have any social media. I don't want to be famous. I don't want to put my face out there. I don't know if I have what it takes. I was very, very private. Obviously, about a year or so later, things have very much changed. But yeah, I was the co-host of the Muslim Street. From there, I ended up co-hosting ProPilled. I was on, a multitude of other networks as well. But yeah, it just kind of snowballed, and here I am. I have a social media presence, and I guess, inshallah, it continues to grow for all the right reasons, of course.
So only like a year you got into this?
Less than a year, actually. I think the first episode that I did on the Muslim Street would have been December of last year. So not a very long time, honestly.
Not even a year. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm very, very new in the game.
Wow. Okay. I want to back up. What got you into journalism to begin with? Is that something you
So
always wanted to do?
yeah, I think you know what it is. You know how when we're young, we all start out having like these goals and dreams and aspirations. Like, I want to be, I want to be a journalist. I want to be an attorney. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a chef. And then somewhere along the way, we all unfortunately give up. And I was one of those stories where I went through life and I was like, I don't know if this is going to pay my bills. I don't know if I can save the world. And slowly I kind of realized, I was like, we're all kind of given attributes, we're given gifts, we're given talents, we're given things that really spark our interest, we're given passions. And to sit there and not hone in on it when you're only given one life is kind of like, it's disrespectful to the universe. It's disrespectful to
Mm.
ourselves. It's disrespectful to the limited life that we have on earth. And I was like, there's so many people who come to this point where they're like, it's too late for me to do this. And I think I kind of reversed that. And I
Mm.
was like, maybe my life is only beginning. And maybe I had to kind of go through the ups and downs and the roller coasters to finally pursue my passion and what I'm good at, but do it with conviction, do it with life experience, do it with knowledge. So I'm coming into it very late in the game, but these are topics that I always wanted to discuss from a very young age. This is my passion and I'm fulfilling it, in the second half of my life. And I'm very excited to do so.
Oh wow. You're like spot on. When I just wanted to be Zorro when I was a kid. So
Hey, it's never too late. I'm an idealist. So if someone tells me they have a dream, I will never say you can't do it. If you're coming here for realism, it's the wrong platform.
I mean, I'm not gonna go over and run at cops with a sword and mark my initials on them, but I do rock the mustache. But that's as close to Zorro as I get. But now, how do you see journalism with podcasting?
So podcasting, it's interesting because a few years ago, I was living in Nashville at the time. I would always joke and say that I wanted to start a podcast. And I think 50% of me was serious and 50% of me was like, it's never going to happen. But I was at the time very active just on Twitter, no other social media platforms. It was an old account that ended up getting deleted, and that's an entirely different story. But I love politics, right? I would see all these people tweet from so many different places in the world about Afghanistan, about Kashmir, about Palestine, about the Rohingyas, about Sudan, about South America. Like there's so many issues. And I was like, I don't have the knowledge, right, to talk about each one extensively, but to interview these individuals and bring their stories and their perspectives to light would be amazing. But, back then I was like, there's no way I could do it. I was like, I don't have, back then I think I was very like, I don't have the voice. I don't have the intelligence. I don't have like the following. I don't have that je ne sais quoi, like I didn't think I was like that it person to do it. And I think, fast forward a few years later, I went through, a multitude of things in my personal life. And I realized if there's something out there in the world that you desire, right, for yourself, or there's a space that doesn't exist out there in the universe, I think we all psychologically wait for something called the other. We wait for God to just build that path for us, or we wait for others to do it, or we're like, someone else will build that avenue and then we can okay it. What I've been looking for doesn't exist. And so I kind of realized whether I'm qualified or not, whether I'm quote unquote meant to or not, if this space doesn't exist, I need to create it. And I think I'm kind of in this middle. I'm in the middle of like understanding that whatever we want in society, whatever we want within humanity, a lot of it comes down to creation. And if you don't do it from a place of ego, right? Like this is for me and I'm going to be famous and have all this money. Now, granted, if those things come across my way, I won't say no. But my intention going into it aren't those tangible things. It's to kind of be part of like the fabric, right? That's like changing the course of humanity. And I know that sounds super like intense, I guess you could say, but if we don't think like that, right? If we don't like, if we're part of the resistance, if we're part of overcoming oppression, if we're part of the intellectual discourse that's discussing change, and we say we don't have the tools to change the course of humanity, but the oppressors think that way, the people who are subjugating think that way, the people who are in power and abusing it think that way, when will there ever be change? So like to me, the oppression, right, the oppressors think this way every single day. They know that if they lift a finger, they can exterminate an entire group of people. They can commit hate crimes, they can commit genocide, they can starve people, they can hurt people, they can like pursue like the nastiest, craziest, terrible things on an individual or collective level. So I think
Mm.
more people on our side of the spectrum need to have that confidence to say, we can change the world. Well, who am I not to do that? Right? We have to understand our greatness. It's the lack of understanding our greatness which is keeping humanity backwards, I would say.
Mm. That's very profound in what you said about like taking action with what we can. I mean, like I heard this metaphor by Bruce Lee. He said something about ideas are powerful, and they start very small, like a pebble. You drop a pebble in a pond, it creates ripples. Eventually, those ripples expand and cover the whole pond. We have to do that action first. So I like what you said there. That's really cool. And you're coming from a lot of power. I feel it right here. It's like, it's really cool. So with all that, has Islam always been in your life from the beginning, or did you connect with it later, or was it always there and you embraced it later? You know how kind of we're born into family. Like I was born in a Catholic family, then grew up in a Buddhist family, then I was Christian, and then I reverted 2 years ago. So, like, were you always with Islam, or when
Yeah,
did it come
no,
into your life or your heart?
that's actually no, that's a wonderful question. So I was born Muslim, but I was born into a denomination. I can't even talk into a denomination or sect called Ismailism. It's the second largest branch, I guess you could say, of Shia Islam or Shiite Islam, as we've heard in the news.
Mm,
And I practiced to a certain degree, but I felt personally, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I didn't feel connected to it for a multitude of reasons. And then
mm,
I think as I got older, especially in the last like 5, 6 years, I started becoming friends with a multitude of, Muslim people who were Sunni. And I have to say, when, I'm an orphan, I think, I've discussed it a little bit on my platform. When I lost my mother, it was a very, very tough time for me. I don't know how I made it from where I was then, like mentally, to where I am now. It's like night and day, but the Sunni community really carried me. And I didn't want to just revert or like change my, I guess you can say, like my religious ideology based on like an emotional decision. So I was like, let me study it.
mm,
I want to study Sunnah, right? Which is the way of the Prophet. I want to study the ideology. I want to study the, like the routines, the pillars, the adab, which is like etiquette. I want to understand it on a philosophical level, a spiritual level. And it really resonated with me. And I think my entire life, like, how people are like, when did you become anti colonial in thinking? Or when did you become revolutionary in thinking? I never have the answer to that because I can go as far back as being like literally 4 years old and thinking in that very like, this isn't okay, this is unethical, right? So I was always really like, very anti colonialism, anti, like subjugation and oppression. I always stood very heavily with like human rights and social justice. And when I understood and finally realized everything that I've learned about Islam from like a cultural perspective, from the news, from the media, from the Western perspective, doesn't match what I'm learning for myself on an ideological level. I was like,
mm,
this is giving me like the spiritual components to how I've always like politically felt, right? Like politically and socially. So it completed me in a lot of ways. And I always tell people there's nothing wrong if you decide to be agnostic or atheist or, even like apathetic to spirituality or religion. But if you are able to study a multitude of different things and you feel inspired and you find like some sort of branch or religion or philosophy that resonates with you, it makes it so much easier to be on the right side of history. And I know I shouldn't say
mm.
that, but I really truly
Why?
feel that.
Why shouldn't you say that about
I
the right side
think
history?
it's very I think religion has become very stigmatized and taboo in this day and age.
Mm,
And I think the reason it's so stigmatized and taboo is not because there's anything intrinsically wrong with it, but I think, as we've learned throughout the course of history, as we see in the news today, religion is kind of used as I guess you can say as a mask or like it as an excuse to commit certain crimes or to do things in the name of God, which aren't in the name of God. But we
mm,
can't take what others are doing. Like when you take something beautiful and abuse it, right? Or when others take something beautiful and abuse it, doesn't make that thing any less beautiful, right? And that's the one
mm,
thing that I've learned. Religion is a beautiful thing. Spirituality is a beautiful thing. And just because it's being abused by others doesn't mean we do away with it. It's almost like, let me just give a weird example. You know how people talk about welfare and they're like, we need to get rid of welfare because there's a multitude of people who are abusing it. There's also a multitude of people who genuinely need it, right? Granted,
Mm-hmm.
like the economic system we live in. And just because there's like a handful of people abusing it doesn't mean we do away with the entire system. Maybe it needs reform, maybe it needs better regulation, maybe it needs better PR, but like welfare and other social programs are a necessity. The people who are abusing it shouldn't sit there and be responsible for doing away with something that ultimately brings good to humanity as a whole. And that's how I feel about religion.
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of like that. As far as like seeing just a small portion abuse a system or anything, it's kind of like when you're not sure of something, and you're like, it takes a while to understand it. So your mind, as a defense mechanism of comfort or something, maybe wants to look for one fault as a reason to not go through the effort to understand why something the way it is, or how something works in full. You're like, oh, I found something wrong. I can't do it. No, move on with my life. It's very simple, but it's very cruel if you think about that. If you just kind of look at the negative stuff and then judge everything, this whole thing with collective judgment and collective punishment is a big, thing I learned this year with everything going on in Haza. And uh, I I reverted in 2024 in February, and it wasn't out of anything emotional. And that's why I was resonating with what you were saying. I always want to make sure my whole is in it, not just an emotional moment or outburst, and then I make some big rash decision. I was actually Christian, and I was when I was looking into Islam, because at that time it was like, we got to save everybody, make sure everyone's in the same club. I didn't go door to door, but I just talked to people. But when I did, I wasn't really trying to get people to sign up to be a Christian. I really cared more about people finding God.
Yes.
And to me, that felt more important, because God is, that's a total different podcast, has been there for my life and my faith and understanding of God, even when I was even angry and running away from God, and returning to, has always helped me in the darkest hours. And that's where I found my strength with everything I've gone through. I don't know how old you were when you lost your mother, but I lost my father when I was 8. And it's really, your reality shifts when you don't see things in an adult mind as a kid mind, and everything freaks out. So God was always there for me. So when I was trying to, as a Christian, promote God, I really wanted to, I care more about people's sincerity more than, sign up for the club and you get a hall pass in, it wasn't
Right.
like that. So um, I was very ignorant about Islam. I had Muslim friends who educated me on who Allah is, which is God. And I was like, oh, it's another name for God. And I just took it like that. And I was like, oh, okay. It's not some like, Zeus or something, right? So I had enough awareness about it, not in a negative light, but I still was ignorant about it. So I was like, all right, let me just read up on it, because everyone has these huge criticisms about it, and everyone having criticism about it is not Muslim. So let me hear from the people who understand it, because I think they know it better, or and all that. So over the course of studying Islam just casually, I started seeing how beautiful it was and how similar it was to what I already believed in with God. And then the more it came similar, and there's no dig at Christianity. This is just my journey. Um, Christianity started feeling more. How do I say this in the nicest way? Incomplete, and like I was
I
missing.
would I would have described it the same way. Like
Okay.
I've had friends. One of my best friends actually from college is Sri Lankan. She grew up Catholic. She actually converted to Judaism. One of my other
Whoa.
friends was, you know, she's Pakistani and she had converted from Islam to Catholicism. And during a lot of my friends, when they were converting, I would also study and read along with them, not because I was planning on converting, but to me, it's like it's knowledge, right? What is knowledge going to do? It's just going to help you at the end of the day. You don't have to revert.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a statement or anything of that nature. But
Mhm.
I honestly, I thought Catholicism was great. I think it gets a lot of heat for a lot of the same reasons Islam does. Like I think it's really put underneath the microscope when it comes to being on the news, and it's viewed as like a political ideology and things of that nature. But one of the reasons I wouldn't have converted to it is because it just didn't. It's not that there's anything wrong with it. It was this incomplete feeling. Am I saying it's incomplete? No, but it was incomplete for me.
Right. That is okay. So you definitely get it. So that incomplete feeling started being fulfilled with the more I got familiar with Islam. And like I don't know which one to pick, but even like something simple as like gambling is wrong. Like before, I never liked gambling. I was like, something's odd here. You know, I'll put money to play a video game, but to gamble my money to get money, and then I don't know. Some felt I just didn't like it. It was like, you know. So it was just something natural. And then certain little things like that. That's the first thing that comes to mind I can say. And little things of how it really focused more on conduct and how you behave and the meaning behind things, not just like don't do this, don't do this. Like there was a lot more, and I relished in that. That was beautiful. So by the time the Nakba 2 happened in October 2023, that's when I started seeing it, like everything clicked. Like I saw the lack of empathy from certain groups, and I'm not saying that had an influence on anything I was doing, and it just kind of reaffirmed the elements that are missing and incomplete from where I thought was something that was complete. Felt like it was a domino effect to have this lack of empathy for human beings. And then I took that as a divine sign. It was like, okay, my goal is I want to be closer with God, Allah, you know? So when I left Christianity, I think it was the end of 2023. And then I took Shahada. I was actually sick. I was at home. I FaceTimed this brother, and he was at a Muslim convention in San Diego. So he FaceTimed me with others. I had witnesses. I was screen capturing it because I was like, hey, my people. Right.
I was just wondering, was it like a group FaceTime? I want to
It was. I was all here with, I got sniffles and I was getting emotional too. So I took Shahada there. I screwed up the Arabic, so they had to do a few times, but it was nice. And the last thing the brother said to me was, welcome to your new life. And I was just like, I get emotional now about it. So get back in there, tears. So the thing is, I really felt complete. And I was shocked that after that, this is where we get into Islamophobia. After I understood, and I'm still learning, and inshallah, I love it. So after taking Shahada and then slowly telling family members, so I just want them to know so they understood why I'm not eating during Ramadan, or I'm gonna not drink anymore and this and that. So
and that's an isolating feeling. I
it
feel
is.
for reverts because when you're born into it or when you're surrounded by family members or practicing the same religion, it's easier, right? When you're reverting and no one else is practicing the same religion, I think it actually takes a lot more courage and bravery and discipline to do it. So kudos to you. Like I really admire that. Like mashallah.
Oh, thank you. Because I did sense the alienation from people around me, but not in a bad way. It's just that like no one's on this journey with me, But to my surprise, some people would ask me questions or be a little bit disappointed, and then I realized the magnitude of Islamophobia, which is what I would like to get into because I was shocked because one of my good friends, they were talking to me. We were just having, Chinese food, and it's like, can't have those dumplings, you know. It's like,
Right,
oh,
right.
pork. Oh, okay, yeah. There's a lot of Asian cuisines have a lot of pork. So
Yes.
and when I was like whatchamacallit, oh yeah, I was talking with them. They said, okay, let me ask you some questions about Islam. I was like, oh sure, go ahead. You know, I'm like, hey, knowledge here, I'll show you with it.
Right.
But the conversation was kind of awkward because it was kind of like, so do you believe that Muhammad, he didn't say peace be upon him, but I am, you believe he's the son of God? I was like, no, he's a prophet, you know. And he's like, all right, do you believe in, you know, Jesus Christ, peace be upon him? He didn't say that, I'm saying it. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean. And then he's like, okay, do you believe women go to heaven? I was like, what kind of question is that? And then it went on, and it was all these things that were so left field and not accurate, but to them it was real. Like they were like checking me. It's like, okay, so you believe in all these little weird crazy kind of things going on, you know. And I was just kind of shocked. I was like, wow, you know, I'm like I'm a proud 45-year-old, you know, you can't change my age, but I was like, all these years I've known you, you've thought like this. I was like, wow. And then so I've had a lot of those shocking I don't know what you call it, shocks of reality or whatever, or
Revelations, maybe.
yeah, maybe, of like where people are at with their misconception and false perception or misguided perception of Islam. And I was like, okay, that's Islamophobia. I see it now, you know? And it was like crazy. So me as a revert, this is it's kind of like, it's not like out of the blue. It's kind of like, oh, connecting all the missing pieces is like, oh, that's why that's been going on. And then, you know, even more when I hear other stuff like Fox News Entertainment, it's not news. When I hear them talk about it, someone's like, whoa, it's like I could have a tattoo of a face palm just by my hand doing it all the time. It's like, wow, I didn't realize how bad it really was until I, you know, it became a part of me. But also, even if you're not in Islam, if you're familiar with it just for educational studies, because I do have friends like that who are aware of it, and they're like, yeah, that is crazy. That's not what you guys believe in. So how much Islamophobia have you had to deal with, that you've had to see throughout your life being Muslim?
So I'm gonna age myself quite a bit, but
Oh, I didn't mean to.
No. It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. I'm very proud of it. Um, so September 11th happened when I was a freshman in high school, and I remember. So my father also passed away when I was very young. My father passed away in 1999. And I want to say a couple of years later, my mother moved my sister and I to a completely different, school district. It was a much nicer district, but it was also a much it was a district with very rich white kids. There's no way around it. You know what I mean? And
I went to one of those neighborhoods too for a second.
yeah, and nothing wrong with that. That's totally
No.
fine. But so it's freshman year. It's like I think like it happened in September, so I think it was like the first or second month of school, and I'm sitting there in Spanish class, okay, and you see those two planes, right? Like they keep playing it over and over again, that footage. I think actually it was just the first plane, and then the second plane happened like shortly afterwards. But they keep playing the footage over and over again, and literally 5 seconds later, they already have like a long list of names of who's responsible and why it happened and X, Y, and Z. And
so quick, you'd wonder why didn't they detect it sooner, huh?
yeah, and I found it very interesting because all the faces that are coming up on the screen look much more similar to me, right, Heena, than they do girls named Ashley or guys named Chad, right? So everyone is turning around and repeatedly looking at me as if I was the one who was the pilot of that plane. And I remember from that point onward, I mean, it was always there, right? There was always racism, even throughout elementary school and middle school. But I think it was more from like a racial standpoint, right? Like where people were racist against Middle Eastern people or South Asian people. But I think in high school, it became very like, oh, she's one of the crazy ones and she believes in this and she's a terrorist and this and that. And it wasn't until I probably got to college where people were more like open-minded because they understood like I knew it was propaganda, but people who were not Muslim who were like in college with me understood, oh, this is propaganda and this is brainwashing, and people were into politics and human rights and social justice. So I could finally have civil conversations. But in high school, not so much. I think all throughout elementary and middle school, I was called the most horrible names, and I'm not going to repeat any of them. But in high school, it became very like, oh, she's weird, And I know like a lot of people would hide their like religious identity. There's a multitude of women who would stop wearing the hijab, or they would stop sharing what their religion was in X, Y, and Z. I didn't do that. I didn't even feel that strongly about Islam at that time, right? But I've always been very rebellious, and I don't know if I want to call it bravery or courage. Maybe that's not the right word, but I was just very like open about it. Like, yes, I'm Muslim. What are you going to do about it?
Like confident.
Yeah, yeah. I was just, because to me, it was like, if I hide that part of me, I'm doing a disservice to other Muslims who are also suffering, right? And I remember during that time, I shouldn't laugh at this. It's not funny because of what happened, but it's funny because this is how ignorance and like xenophobia works. I remember during that time, there were a group of Mexican kids who like were basically beaten up after 9/11. And I laughed at that, not because I want children to get beaten up. That's horrible and disgusting. But I laughed at it because I was like, people are so ignorant that they don't even know how to hate crime correctly, right? Like they're just looking at someone that's a different ethnicity who looks different than them. They automatically assume this person is not white, this person is not wealthy, they look ethnic, they have different features, and thus they must belong to this crazy cult, and we must, like beat them up or whatever the case may be. And we even saw with the Sikh community, right?
Yeah, a lot of Punjabi
turban.
brothers who got beaten up, and they're Punjabi.
Yeah. Yeah, they're
Hello.
Punjabi. Like Sikhs have, Islam has way more in common with Christianity than Judaism as an Abrahamic religion than it does with Hinduism or Sikhism, which are totally different.
Yeah.
And yet you had like all these people going after like Hindu individuals, after Sikh individuals, especially because they wear the turban. It was insane. The entire
anyone
thing,
who is brown and confusing.
yes, anyone that doesn't fit the stereotypical, like, okay, this is just your average, Protestant white individual from below the Bible Belt, right? And there's nothing wrong with being from that background, but it's the norm, it's the majority. If you're not part of that majority, if you're not part of status quo, people would just be like, oh, are they a terrorist? So I think that's how it psychologically worked back then.
Yeah, because looking back, because I spent a lot of my studies with entertainment, cartoons, and movies and video games, right?
Right.
But no, I'm passionate. That's why I do the work I do, because I'm contributing to it. So it's not a waste. I'm not a true couch potato. But looking back, I could see like even in media, be it video games and whatnot, especially video games, because there's a whole bunch of, like, you hear Call of Duty, Medal of Honor. I don't know if you're familiar with those titles, but there's a lot of war games that get put out, because it also promotes military. It promotes, it's really great for the NRA, but also it gets people comfortable with certain stigmas and stereotypes. Like, it took a while that now the soldiers in the games are, you could have every ethnicity and every gender. For a while it wasn't. And you would, when you see the type of villains that they pick that you have to shoot at, it's like, oh my gosh, it's everyone outside of America. Oh my gosh, people can go on a practice killing spree. It's like, oh, this is hard. I'm gonna stick to my Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy stuff. But particularly in the 80s, I'm even going further back there, because I know Rambo 3, when that came out, the government was supporting the Taliban. And they used Rambo 3 as an awareness of what's going on with their struggle.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I knew that obviously the government, installed the Taliban and all that, but I didn't know that they were using video games to normalize those relations.
Well, not the video games, but Rambo the movie, the third one specifically. I'm putting them all. I put them all under entertainment. That's how they're billed, anyways. So, like, even like Rambo 3 was very pro Taliban. Even at the end of it, it's the third part of the trilogy. It's Rambo's story. Oh my gosh, they had some text at the end giving like a shout out and praise and support of the Taliban, calling them heroes is for the brave warriors and all that. So I forget, that's like around mid 80s. It's around the 80s when things are shifting from like Russia's not the evil guys anymore, it's the Middle East. And that's even when you see in GI Joe, because before that Russians were like the bad guys in entertainment. Even in GI Joe they had an episode where they had this group called October Guard, and like, who are they? I don't like Russians. No, they're the Russian version of GI Joe. So they all got along. Then also Rocky 4, the Russians got along with Americans. So there's a slow shift. Then 10 years later, in the mid 90s, you have Netanyahu promoting Israel narrative of the Middle East and Islam being the bad guys, and Arabs they just want to kill everybody. And that's when that narrative started. And then around the 90s, you still see a change of, who the bad guys are in the backgrounds of such entertainment like video games and such, and maybe comic books and everything. Not all the time, though. But a lot of that was pushed a little bit more comfortably than the Russians are the bad guys or the Chinese. But, and I feel like entertainment has this response, or art, and any form of entertaining has this responsibility of also sharing awareness, of what's going on in the world. Or they fantasize history and caricature groups of people to get you comfortable with seeing them in a certain light.
Yes, the dehumanization process is not, I'm glad you're actually bringing this up. I have always heard the discourse around why video games are psychologically harmful, and I just thought it's because it glorifies military or it glorifies violence. I didn't even think about it from the angle of like it also helps instill, like, I guess you can say, like, justifying foreign policy, but it's not like it really does. I never put that together, because you see it with music, you see it with Hollywood and entertainment, and you see it with like the media and MSM and just what's culturally cool and not, like, like the way people are dressing and responding to things. But yeah, video games are still part of that lexicon.
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
And that's where I get a lot of my research in a way, because I love entertainment, but also it's not just like video games and cartoons and all that stuff. Even the comic books and everything, because even though there is that uncomfortable narratives, or what am I saying? Let's just say themes of propaganda sprinkled in little things here and there, right? There are also those other stories that actually have high concept stakes and critical thinking. Like, I'll even go back to a Superman movie, Batman vs. Superman, and the one before it got a lot of critical heat, but I'm thinking what was in it. Like, I'm talking about 2013. There was a Superman movie, the Man of Steel one. Sorry, I'm geeking out on you. But
no, you're totally fine.
All
if
right,
I
great,
had
great.
like makeup or something, I'm sure you'd zone out. So we all have our vices. It's okay.
You're zoning out?
Yeah. No, I'm not zoning out.
Oh my gosh.
If I discussed it, you would.
Okay. All right, cool. I was like, wow. Oh, this is my channel. So anyways, I'm just playing. No, but what's interesting is in that first story, there's this alien force coming to colonize Earth, and then to have a weapon that wipes out all the indigenous. And then another alien character that's saying, what you're talking about is genocide to get your goal of building our people on this land where other people already exist. And then the villain yells back, he's like, yes, and I'm arguing its merits with a ghost. And I was like, wow, that's some deep stuff. And then, of course, that gets critically slammed. But not for that. They pick other reasons, to not accept it. And then the sequel comes out, and it opens up with some issue in the Middle East where there's a false attack, and they have a false witness system to slam Superman. So then that story gets critically slammed for being too dark and edgy. And then now you get all these popcorn color, fluffy, no meaning, surface level, like TikTok comedic jab pacing stuff. And then there's no critical thinking anymore. So what I'm saying is, like, there's this huge history of propaganda and entertainment. And there are pieces of work, video games, comic books, movies, and stories that do push for critical thinking. And I'm a fan of that stuff. But every time something heavy comes out in that medium of entertainment, it gets slammed. Because I feel I personally feel it goes against the narrative of what the whole propaganda system is. Because I don't know if you know this, but since Disney has all the Marvel films, they are all funded by the Department of Defense. They have a certain check mark they have to get through. So people who are fans of Marvel have this undying loyalty that if anything isn't Marvel, they will shun it, they will hate it, they'll curse it into oblivion. So now people are taught IP loyalty, which could be government loyalty, patriotic loyalty, without any critical thinking, and then all the villains are, or whoever is pointed as the bad guys, that's who you are, or like looking down on. So there's like this huge battle of propaganda in every form of entertainment, I feel. So when we go to Islamophobia and the how that's utilized, I connect the dots looking back on all these other things of like, okay, there's this huge like narrative war in entertainment, and it's usually a losing battle. And I forgot where I was going with that, but I feel like um with everything we've gone through and seen with Islamophobia, how it's been like promoted even to this day, I feel that there's an expiration date on it because of how the tragedy of what's going on in Palestine and other places like Congo and Sudan, where people are seeing the suffering is very human. It's real, And then if we cannot connect on our differences, I mean, if it's hard to connect on differences, but what is similar that we all can relate to is losing a loved one, is the pain and suffering of what you're going through when people are trying to hurt you, trying to eliminate you. We've all gone through some level of loss or are afraid to lose someone, even our own lives and freedoms. So I think that is what's getting people to break the mold and see more of it, even Islam, as like, oh, it's just another religion that teaches you to be good and love God, Like being Muslim longer than me, do you see like what's your perception on how things are changing? Is it a lot? Is it not enough? Where do you think we are going right now with like society and viewing Islam?
So I'm going to give you two perspectives because I'm
Please.
passionate about both religion and politics. I think if we look at it from a political point of view or perspective, it's going to be a bit more pessimistic. I think the only way that the narrative changes in colonial, Western, or imperialist MSM or media is if it complements the foreign policy. And what I mean by that is the only way that they'll change their narrative in Islam is if they find out that maybe there's resources in another country where it has a multitude of, like a different religion, right? That they need to dehumanize. Or maybe they now need to have an alliance with the Middle East because unfortunately now everyone is part of the Abrahamic Accords, and relations with Israel are normalized, so they no longer need to dehumanize Muslims, right? So depending on, I think, US foreign policy and Western foreign policy as a whole, that is going to dictate what race is dehumanized, what
Mm-hmm.
religion is dehumanized, right? The dehumanization that we see in the world has nothing to do with the race being wrong or bad or the religion being wrong or bad. It has everything to do with what, I guess you can say, like, serves US foreign policy interests. If it's economically favorable for them to be racist or prejudice against Muslims because it allows, the West to drop bombs all over the Middle East and kill and starve and like place sanctions and embargoes and have proxy wars with a multitude of, different nations that are now economically helping the West, right? Due to
And this is all
resources,
proven.
yeah, access to ports and things of that nature, it will continue onward. And so I don't think the fight should be, we need to necessarily just humanize Islam. That is a big part of it. I'm not saying we shouldn't,
Mm.
but I think to really nip it in the bud per se, we need to go, and this is a very profound and big goal, but we need to overcome imperialism. We need to overcome colonialism, because
Mm.
even the day that Islam is humanized, even the day that Arabs and Palestinians are humanized, if foreign policy interests are now going to say, hey, you know what, it's really, I don't even want to name a race or religion. I don't want like the CIA or FBI to like watch this and be like, ooh, let me take notes. But if they find
Yeah.
yeah, if they find X religion or race in a certain area where now they found oil reserves, they found, you know, uranium or some sort of, you know, resources, or they realize, hey, if we, you know, get a hold of these ports, this will be economically favorable to us. Or if we take this country's resources and we take it for ourselves and sell it back to them, or, you know, if the IMF can give them loans and keep them in bondage, right? If they start thinking in that sense, and it's this country, this region, this continent per se is full of a race or religion that isn't Muslim or Arab, they're going to dehumanize that. So
Mm.
to me, I look at it as the collective, right? Do I say we should protect Muslims, we should protect the Ummah, X, Y, and Z? Yeah, absolutely. But first and foremost, we need to look at it collectively as a human being, right? Like just because one day like Palestinians and, you know, Muslims are inshallah like humanized doesn't mean that we should now forget about, you know, other individuals like Hindus, Sikhs, atheists, you know, black people, white people, you know, Asian people, whatever the case may be. We should all collectively be humanized. And as long as US foreign policy interest keeps running the way that it has for the last few centuries, really, someone is going to be the scapegoat, right? And I don't want to be the kind of person that's like, oh, as long as it's not Muslims, I don't care. As a Muslim, right?
Mm.
As a Muslim, I feel that it is, you know, our obligation and responsibility is, yes, first and foremost to the ummah, but that doesn't mean that we now subjugate and like, you know, stand silent when there's oppression going on anywhere in the world, right? And that's something that I talk about a lot amongst Muslims. Yes, we need
Mm.
to work internally on like overcoming, you know, there's a lot of racial hierarchy issues, there's a lot of people who, you know, preach about religion through the lens of culture, which can be oppressive. There's a lot of people who are like, well, I shouldn't, you know, care about this group of Muslims because they don't come from my race, or, you know, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of
Mm.
internalized misogyny, a lot of internalized racism. All those issues should be addressed in the Ummah. And then we need to focus on like humanizing the Ummah and humanizing Muslims. But that doesn't mean that once Muslims are okay, the rest of the world is okay. So we need to go to the source of the issue, right? I think humanizing Muslims is kind of like putting a, no, I don't even want to say putting a band-aid on it. It's kind of like the problem has already like existed, and so we're trying to, you know what I mean, like take care of the problem, but we should go to the source of the problem. Because
Mm.
I don't what we're seeing in Sudan, what we're seeing in Congo, what we're seeing in, you know, the Muslim world today, what we saw throughout the course of what Native Americans went through, what we saw African Americans go through with slavery, what we saw the Japanese go through with like, you know, the world wars. I mean, we don't want to repeat that for anyone
Mm.
at any time in history. And the source of the problem is not humanizing anything specifically, it's to nipping the issue in the bud. I That's just
Mm.
the way that I view it. Now, that was a very long-winded political answer. From
No,
a
I like what you
religious
said. Just to
perspective,
jump
yeah,
in, because the last
yeah.
message to the prophet was about um, equality and no judgment of color of skin and class and all that. We're all equal. And I was already sold when I got to that last part. I was like, I'm totally sold. It's like, I found you. I'm close to you now, God. So I agree with you, because you can't just like pick one at a time, and then the one you don't get to, let them die and all that. No way. It's like we have a duty to humanity, and I think that pleases God, you know. But
Yeah, because I want to call this out. Maybe this is controversial, but I meet Muslims who will say things like, "Well, these people are atheists, or these people, I don't know, gamble or drink, or they're gay, or you know, whatever," and they're like,
mhm,
"This is a sin, or this is not part of my religion, and thus whatever happens to them is not my problem." Yes, it is your problem because only God can judge them, right? Whatever sins people are doing, right, and we're perceiving it from our like human limited senses as a sin. Whatever it is or isn't is between them and God. It is our
mhm,
duty and obligation to help and protect humans, right? Like God, you know, Allah created individuals for a reason, right? And
mhm,
whatever is going on like with their lives, whether we agree with it or not, as long as it's not harmful to other human beings, correct? If they're not harming other human beings, if we're not advocating for them, helping them, or to the very least, if we're part of the oppression, that sin is now on us. And I think a
mm,
lot of people don't think about it that way, right? Like solidarity shouldn't just extend to people who look like you or practice like you. It should be to all of Allah's creations. And I sometimes feel like the reason that's controversial amongst Muslims is not because, oh, Muslims have different ideologies, and beliefs within the context of the ummah. It's because people have not learned the religion for themselves. I really think that's a big
Mm.
issue. A lot of people learn religion through the context of like what they're taught through society, through the lens of culture, through the lens of nationality, through the lens of Western MSM, through the lens of imams and other like religious figures who are telling them what to believe. We all need to sit down and read the Quran. We need to read the seerah of the Prophet. We need to understand Sunnah. We need to understand the pillars for ourselves. And I think once we do that, that in itself is a form of liberation for the ummah. We need to, really take responsibility and do that for ourselves. Because I think the message of Islam is there's a lot of disinformation and propaganda because people are not studying religion for themselves, right? And
Mm.
Muslims themselves are part of the problem when it comes down to it, when it comes to this issue.
No, I believe that because I was having a conversation today with a friend, and we have a lot of deep conversations. This is why I like this friend a lot. We don't see eye to eye. It's like whoa, but anyways, I love my friends. But I was speaking to them about coexistence amongst Christians and Jews in the as the Quran, as what I learned from the Quran, and the remark was like, "Wow, you sound enlightened. Too bad not all Muslims are like you." I was like, "Wait, I mean, I didn't like fight him back, but I took it as like, uh, this person got like, and I don't know if I'm trying to promote myself or anything here. It's just it felt like I gave him a sincere truth of Islam, and it felt like it was the first time they heard it, and that by whatever reason, I feel that they translated as that's only me. But it's something that I hear other Muslims attain as well. But also the exclusivity of not applying like that. I have no idea if I did. Never play Scrabble with me. So uh, that extends to humanity the way I see it. Because like there was this one Muslim doctor on. I don't like this guy, but Pierce Morgan. Oh, I can't stand him. I have to do that. So he was giving him crap because like, oh, you're against the gay people. So why don't you say, just make fun of gay people or whatever and not serve them? It's like, wait, I'm a doctor. I'm here to help people. And I felt that's our duty to help people no matter who they are, because I think that again is our conduct to other human beings, and that is key to Islam, I believe. So I feel like a lot of people don't know this, and I wonder why.
But it's a lack of I think it's a form of cognitive dissonance, and I'll tell you why.
Hmm.
So on my Instagram, maybe like once a week, I'll like put, hey, do you have any questions for me, geopolitics, whatever the case may be. And someone asked me a very profound question. They're like, you know, I forgot the individual's name. I should have written it down. But there's some big figure right now, some female in Pakistan. She has like 1 million followers, and she is very, very pro Palestine, which is great, but she's also very, very anti like LGBTQ, right? And he was like,
Hmm.
how do you feel about that? And I was like, to be honest, I disagree with it, and I'll tell you why. If some Muslims are like, hey, I'm pro Palestine and that's part of my religion, but I'm anti LGBTQ because it's against my religion. Are you sitting there and going against every single person who eats pork? Are you going against every single person who gossips? Are
Hmm.
you going against every single person who drinks? Are you going against every single person who is committing adultery, or like I mean, the list goes on and on, right? When you are exclusively going after one group that you're like, hey, this is a sin in Islam or whatever, I think then you're contributing to their oppression, right? Their
Hmm.
sin is their sin. That is between them and God. And if you're purposely going after one group that's sinning and not all of them, then now you're just coming from a place of hate, right? And
And
so
prejudice. Yeah.
yeah, and I disagree with it. I think like if I'm not telling Muslims, hey, we should advocate for like X, Y, and Z, right? If this is not our battle, if this is not our place, and that's how people feel, that's totally okay. But to advocate for hatred against a group that is sinning, and only to say it against LGBTQ and not the long list of other sins that we have in Islam, to me, then you're doing it out of ego. You're doing it out of no.
Mm.
So I really
Like a
deeply
holier than thou.
correct. Yeah. Because like think about it. Like, you don't have to quote unquote, like let's say someone's not LGBTQ, but they're eating pork, they're lying, they're cheating, they're stealing, they're committing adultery, they're taking interest, I mean the list goes on and on and on. And these are smaller things, right? Like why aren't you calling out all the people that are like exploiting people and hurting people and doing it on like a grand scale? I think to advocate for hate against a certain group and say, well, in my religion, it's a sin. If you're going only after one group and by the words that you're sharing on such a big platform that there's going to be hate crimes committed against them, they may be denied medical services, they're not going to have a good quality of life. Now you're playing God on some level, right? And I just don't think that's okay. I'm not telling people like, as a Muslim, we should be advocating for people to sin, right? I'm not saying go out and like fight for people to drink and do X, Y, and Z. No,
Right,
but
right.
this is not our battle. And to the very least, we should not add to like the lexicon of people suffering as a whole. Whatever people do is between them and God. And we don't have to advocate for it, but we don't have to contribute to the hatred and marginalization against it as well. Because when trans people and like LGBTQ people are denied medical services, when they're hurt, when they're killed, when they're raped, when they go through those issues, and our hateful words contributed to their suffering, that is now our sin, and we have to take ownership of that. I think there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that I see in the Muslim world, and I don't think it's because of Islam. I think it's because people do not understand their religion and fate to the magnitude that they should. And that's why I also try to always preface the things I say by saying, look, I'm not a scholar. I am still learning and growing every day. But from what I conceptualize and understand, this is an Urdu word, but there's a certain tariqa, there's a certain way that we have to go about things. And we're not seeing that in the Muslim world because, we point the fingers to the outsiders, right? Oh, Islamophobia, Islamophobia. But if we ourselves are not taking control of and we're not understanding and conceptualizing our religion, if we're not setting the example, if we're not living and abiding by it, we can't then point the fingers to others and say, you don't understand our religion. We have to understand the religion first and foremost for ourselves.
Wow, that's beautiful. Was that the second example of how you see change with Islamophobia?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay.
I'm a rambler. I apologize.
No. I'm just checking because I'm a rambler too. We got two ramblers. I don't know where we're gonna go sometimes, so we might have to just ramble through it. Wow. So, I'd like to take this opportunity to segue towards geopolitics because Islamophobia, and I see it because when I run into people, because at my work, I'm helping people at the testing if they have like any nerve damage and stuff, and then we get to talking, and then every now and then people say, oh, what do you believe in? Because when people like you, they kind of open up more, and then this is where I'm like, well, hey, I'm Muslim, and then I get a different array of people reacting. Some are loving, some are nicely insulting Islam too to my face, and I just say like, oh well, I'm here to make sure you are okay. I'm not here to think, you can't break my faith. Don't worry, it's cool. But I get some little jabs too. Like I've heard like women are forced to wear certain things, and they think all women are in burqas, and what's another one? One guy was telling me that when Muhammad passed, peace be upon him, that he was carried up in these magical chariots flying. I was like, wait, that are you mixing it with Hindu? Yes. It's like I get all this misinformation, but it's so proudly like thrown at me. And I forgot where I was going with this question, but misconception. Oh yeah, so I do see that's all people's misconceptions I see are results to someone or another narrative out there in like entertainment or whatever. There's not really much news channels. It's like a lot of propaganda and stuff and opinions and how they want you to think by what they don't cover and do cover. But there's a lot of like they think a lot of people are like killing bloodthirsty jihadists or something, and um, they get that from uh, this narrative that's being pushed. That's everything we covered of dehumanizing people, so the governments could go out and do crazy stuff. So, I guess my question is like, the magnitude of Islamophobia that's been pushed so much into our system, and uh, how would you explain how Islamophobia is used and why America is perceived by many outside of America as an empire? Because I know a lot of Americans don't even know much about Islam, and they don't even see that we're very much like the Roman Empire. Like the Roman Empire had militaries all over the world. What do we have?
Right,
It's
and we
like,
have military bases all over the world.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
very, very
So it's
similar. Yeah.
like a lot of people. How do you explain how Islamophobia is fueled for the system that they can't even see? Like, I think Americans feel like they're the rebels in Star Wars, but we're actually like the Empire. So
Well, we have to look at it. Let's take a step back from like recent history. We have to look at it
sure.
kind of like what, I was talking about earlier when we look at the colonial Western empire, right? The American empire. At the end of the day, every single time that there was a group of people that was or that were like subjugated, they were dehumanized, right? Oh, they're barbaric, they're savages, they're X, Y, and Z. And by pushing that narrative, it would justify why they were being killed or why they were being subjugated or oppressed
Hmm.
or killed or raped or why their land and resources were being taken away. And we saw that even throughout, the British Empire. We saw that when they went to India, for example, when they went to different parts of Asia, when they went to different parts of even, South America, all these different countries that were basically under the British Empire, or, in the recent few centuries, we've even seen subjugated by US foreign policy and imperialism, we're repeatedly told over and over and over again, these people are beneath us, right? Their morals, their values, their civilizations, their way of life, their customs, the way that they eat, the way that they look, the way that they perceive, like, marriage or food or whatever the case may be. It is barbaric.
Mm.
We are the civilized world. And I think what we're seeing in the Middle East, or what we're seeing in the Swana region, is honestly no different. I think that the issue basically comes down to the fact that, let me actually bring it back to an example. You know how I said when one of my friends converted to Catholicism, she was going to RCIA. You know what I'm talking about, like those classes. It's basically for adults who want to convert into Catholicism. And so you would like sit down with the deacon and stuff like that. And there's like a group of people and you'd learn about the religion. And I remember the deacon would always say something like, oh, and let's pray for the Nation of Islam, which is funny because the Nation of Islam is actually like something we saw later in history. It's not what it's always been called. It's something totally different. But he'd be like, oh, let's pray for the Nation of Islam because they've had issues for like, I don't know, thousands of years. And to me, I was like, wait, do people not like understand history? Because this whole dehumanization of like, modern Muslims started when the Ottoman Empire destructed. So World War
Hmm.
One, you had the Ottoman Empire destructed, which was very it was a Turkish empire essentially. But most of the Muslim factions and countries that we see in the modern, Middle East were under the Ottoman Empire. So when it was destructed, the US, Britain basically went through and carved out little regions, right? And then they themselves were the ones who installed the governments, right? These puppet governments. For example, and I don't
Mm.
want to like do like this huge history course. We can save
No,
that for
you
another
can. This is my
episode.
channel. It's
Yeah.
director's cut. Let's
But
go.
even with the Ba'ath Party it rose in the 60s, 1960s, and it was the Ba'ath Party that basically installed Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And the US led it. The US installed the Ba'ath Party. They put, Saddam Hussein in power. And the US was very, very like in favor, right, of the Ba'ath Party and Saddam. But the moment that Saddam started defying, again, I say this repeatedly, US foreign policy and foreign policy interests, that's when he suddenly became enemy of the state. And I think
Mm.
that's the problem that a lot of people don't understand. It's even like Jolani. Let's look at Syria, for example. It was under, Assad, and that's, Assad was basically, ruling Syria, and it wasn't just him; it was like his family as well. They were basically a dictatorship that were ruling, Syria for several decades, and then when the quote unquote, as they call it, Syrian revolution happened, Jolani was installed by the U.S. and Israel, right? And suddenly, Jolani previously was considered this like ISIS member, Al Qaeda member. He was on like the most wanted list. He was like considered this dangerous, terrorist. And then on top of that, you have to remember that HTS, which is the Syrian faction of Al Qaeda, was also considered a terrorist group by US foreign policy. The moment they installed Jolani, HTS was then now considered like no longer a terrorist group. And on top of that, Jolani is now like supposed to speak at the UN. I know he
Mhm.
was in Baku, Azerbaijan, right before they bombed Syria. And he was like, I guess potentially discussing normalizing relations with Israel with the Abrahamic Accords, giving all these examples to show people that one day it's a terrorist group. One day these individuals are
Mhm.
terrorists. One day Al Qaeda is terrible. The next day they're America's best friends. They're homies with Israel, right? And the reason we see that is because if it serves US foreign policy interests, they're the good guys. But the moment that, anything a leader does, a faction does, a resistance group does, a terrorist group does, once it starts defying imperialism, once it starts speaking out against Israel, once again it starts fighting back or looking out for its own interests, like for example, trying to nationalize oil reserves, right, or to create like a currency that would unite Africa, Pan-Africanism under Gaddafi, for example, in Libya.
Mhm.
When leaders start doing things that are in the interest of their own countries as opposed to what's best for the West, they are then considered a terrorist. So a lot of these groups that we see in the Middle East, right? A lot of them are funded by Iran, and you have the Houthis in Yemen, which are being heavily bombed right now, by the U.S. and Israel. We have Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is also under a lot of fire right now and might start a civil war in Lebanon. We had previously, even under Assad, had a lot of resistance groups in Syria that were pro like axis of resistance. And when I say axis of resistance, when they're resisting empire, they're resisting imperialism, they're resisting US foreign policy. A lot of these factions are actually created not because, oh, Islam is barbaric and crazy. If you look at it historically speaking, a lot of these terrorist groups, resistance groups, guerrilla warfare, whatever you want to call it, were created in response to Israel, right? Not respecting the sovereignty of these countries. And so I always give people this example, right? I am from Florida, and we have that, I forgot what it's called, like stand your ground or whatever laws, where it's basically like if someone is on your property and you've tell them to leave or whatever and they refuse to, you are allowed to shoot them and there's no like legal consequences. So if we now apply that to the Middle East, in a lot of ways, these factions are doing exactly what that law states. So why is it
Mhm.
okay on a domestic level for us to protect our property, our, family members, our lives, our sovereignty, whatever the case may be? But the moment other countries do it against Israel or the US or imperialism as a whole, now they're suddenly terrorists, right? Like if I was
Mhm.
to shoot someone on my property, right, who's trying to kill me and, take my property or whatever the case may be, I would have that legal right because this property belongs to me. But what we're basically doing is dehumanizing people in the Swana region and saying they are not allowed to resist occupation. They're not allowed to resist military intervention. They're not allowed to resist rape and murder and genocide and having their own land, their resources, their sovereignty, their family members, right? They're not allowed to protect that. We're basically saying we own the world. And if you do not do as we say, then you are a terrorist. And is that like, that's the definition of terrorism under the US? Is it the legal, you know what I mean? Like definition of a terrorist? Absolutely not. And people don't separate the two.
Oh, that's that's on the money right there. I mean, that's it. Because essentially, yeah, like it's gonna bring up an example, but like especially the resistance in Gaza, you know, they're labeled terrorists. and it's all
And
labeled one
Hamas
because
is
there's
part of
multiple
active
factions.
resistance.
And there's
Yeah.
multiple factions fighting too. It's not just Hamas and all that. So they just kind of blanket everyone under this one character villain they designed. And because if you're seeing your government going after what's accepted as the bad guys, you're not going to care, you know.
Right, exactly. And
So
that's the thing. They don't and I don't mean to interrupt you. It's just
oh no,
they
it's fine.
don't humanization of individuals in the Swana region is not contingent on their humanity. It is contingent on what economically serves the West. That's it.
Mm,
If it is profitable to kill people and they are resisting that murder, they are now terrorists. That's all it comes down
mhm.
to,
Yeah,
right?
because these last 2 years have proven that. Because how many times have
Absolutely.
we heard our government say, "Oh, we're working really hard on a ceasefire. We're working really hard." Then everyone in the UN votes, "Hey, ceasefire is like a veto. We're going to veto this. It's not happening." It's like things don't add up, you know. And it's to the point. I mean, it's beyond the point where all the excuses are very. It's like you're seeing a cheesy movie, right? I'm sorry, I'm going back to this. This is my mind. When you see a cheesy movie and the bad guy says the obvious things, and they're obviously the bad guy, and there's no hiding it. It's like that's what we're looking at with these people in power. It's really embarrassing, cringing, and people are dying because of it. It's so morally degrading and embarrassing on so many levels. It's like, uh and again with the weaponization of Islamophobia and dehumanizing people. And I remember my point from like 2 conversations ago, um, that weaponizing this ignorance of Islam. I've noticed that these people from everyone I hear that are ignorant about it are mixing certain cultures they don't like the Taliban. They think all Islam is the Taliban or whatever in their conception of that, and they just kind of label it on everybody. It's like this character that doesn't really exist. It's like a caricature, satirical caricature on the truth, and they kind of use that as their mascot to just not care about what happens to people for the real estate Trump is after or whatever for short term. And that is, after realizing all that, I was like, oh, that's the end goal. That's the end game. Because you see, like in Colombia, when they canceled Asian studies, I think it was that they canceled Middle Eastern studies, like actions like that, and taking certain programs out. To me, and I believe you said this on one of your shows too, and I believe this too. I said on my show as well, is that uh, actions speak louder than words. So
Yes.
when you're making these adjustments, these aren't quick solutions. What they are is adjustments for going forward. Like there's this end game that they're committed to. And when I say they, I don't want to be lazy with just saying, "Oh, they, hoo ha ha." Like I'm gonna be specific. Like our government and the people complicit with the legal occupation's goals of expansion. Um, it's uh, it's like there's this end game goal they're trying to reach, and we're here. And even though I feel like everything's out in the open, everyone has access to see what's really going on. It's literally disgustingly, painfully obvious of what's going on. And I think people are just having a moral dilemma or something's wrong in their brain. They can't function. But it's like we see everything at its worst right now, and it needs to stop. That's what I believe. But I feel that all these changes they're doing is setting the grounds for the next step here and the next step here and the next step here, which is wherever their end goal is. And that to me is very, very dangerous. And I feel like knowledge of geopolitics um, can help. I see it's more important than ever because this is where our taxes are going into. Like I feel like it's very lazy and wanting to be irresponsible, thinking that things that happen in the world don't affect us. We're part of it. We're funding it. All the money leaving California does not come back here. That's why it's so expensive here, because a lot of our money goes out everywhere, because we also have a lot of farms here that helps feed America and everything. So there's a lot of crap we have to go through here. So, but all those funds don't come to us. It comes to this other project far, far away. And I don't know the end game of that. I just see the devastation, or we all see the devastation of where it is. So all the people for this expansion project of the greater Israel, and that's not a secret. I covered that on my channel a year ago. Well, I'm not saying like I'm a genius or anything, but it's like whatever that end game result is, I feel like they're trying to, these governments aligned with the legal occupation are trying to get there, however long it takes, and they're laying the groundwork of how to get there. So how much, this is my question to you after all that, is how much of humanization, education of geopolitics, and the truth of any phobias need to be accomplished to like have people wake up to stop that? Like, what do we got to do?
It's interesting that you ask me that, because I've always been interested in geopolitics. I was always interested in, like, social justice and human rights. And I used to follow domestic policy a lot back in the day. I still do, but not to the same magnitude. And I think one thing that made me realize what I considered like a hobby or passion back in the day was actually instrumental to social justice and human rights was when, here, I'm trying to think. I think it was, so I admit I was a big Bernie girl back in the day. Obviously, that's not a thing anymore, right? I think a lot of people became very politically active with Bernie because we thought he was going to be the change at X, Y, and Z. But I was a political organizer, I remember I was one of the founding members of the building the Muslim caucus for DSA back then. I was part of another group called, Ismailis Rise Up, and I was really big into domestic politics. So if people follow me on social media now, they see I post a lot about geopolitics. Back then, it was very domestic. And that's when I had created my first Twitter account, and I was posting a lot about elections and things that were going on and how certain senators were doing or certain bills that were being passed. I was very, very good with it. And the people who were the most invested in the outcome of the election, believe it or not, were not people domestically, at least when it came to like my followers and stuff. I had a very, very big international following back then. I think a multitude of them still follow me like on Facebook. And they would DM me and be like, well, what's going on and what passed and what happened with this bill? And did this person win this race? And I was really taken aback, right? Because me being into geopolitics and understanding how international governments work or what races and elections are going on or what bills are being passed or what trade deals are happening, I was an outlier in my group of friends. And I mean, I still am till this day. Let's all be candid. But the way just the common individual in various different countries around the world could very easily DM me and tell me more about my government and my, the elections going on in my own backyard than I could really took me aback. And the number one thing I heard from around the global South, it wasn't just one area. They were like, whoever becomes your president is going to determine if I live or die. And I still think about that till this day. Now, we've learned, obviously, through the course of history and everything that's happened, it doesn't matter who gets elected. Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to die. But the reason that the global South, especially, is so, why does everyone hone in on the elections and everything going on in terms of foreign policy, domestic policy, who we're electing, what bills are being passed, what trade deals are happening, what embargoes and sanctions are we putting on other countries? Everyone around the world follows it like a hawk because it could determine if they're going to be able to have a job, eat, sleep. Are their family members going to live? Are they going to have access to their own resources? Is there going to be a war on their territory the next day? Our elections determine that. The bills that we have, the wars that we declare, the decisions made here determine that. And that's when I realized I have to understand geopolitics, because not to undermine, right, like how policies are affecting us, but at the end of the day, things that the US is doing is affecting the rest of the world way more than it even affects people here, which is scary to say considering how bad inflation is, the homelessness we have going on, the lack of, healthcare, the lack of resources, the lack of infrastructure, the propaganda, how expensive school is, what the job market is like. I mean, the list goes on and on. right? What the government has done on a domestic level has impacted us to the degree that people joke and say, hey, we just live in a third world country with the Gucci belt. And I believe that. I really do. The quality of life here is absolutely terrible. And yet, despite all the terrible things that we see our fellow brothers and sisters, right, in the US going through, the decisions that the US is making is literally exterminating people around the world. And it's not just Palestine. I'm not undermining Palestine, but that's just a area that we've now been focusing on. Is it by far the worst genocide of our time? Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't, even begin to touch the iceberg or like get to the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Rohingyas, when it comes to Kashmir, when it comes to the suffering of like the famines that have been going on in Yemen, the suffering that was going on, in parts of like South America, parts of East Asia. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And it's not like they've ended. It's still ongoing. While we're watching what's going on in Gaza, there's a multitude of other famines. There's a multitude of other genocides. There's a multitude of other resources that are being taken. One thing that people don't do is they don't focus on Congo and Sudan to the magnitude that they should. And even then, that's a very small, short list of everything going on around the world. So, I'm not going to lie. Geopolitics is a passion. It's always been a passion. But I hone in on it because I realized that there's certain things that I study, certain predictions I make, certain analysis that I have. I'm sure other people have the knowledge that I do. It's not like I'm brilliant or anything of that nature, but I'm willing to share it because I'm an independent journalist. No one is paying me to say that. I'm merely doing it out of, passion for human rights and to educate people on what's going on around the world. So we better understand the world that we live in. A lot of other journalists, a lot of other geopolitical analysts, they're getting a paycheck, right? And whether it's from American media or not, right? Even if they're being paid by, let's say they work for TRT, the Turkish government, or they're being paid by RT, Russia Today, the Russian government, or even Al Jazeera, right? At the end of the day, that is still, I believe, Qatari MSM. So they're being paid by the government of Qatar to say what they do. A lot of the news sources that we think are unbiased still have I guess you can say like a, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like they have a certain, I'm blanking
like
out.
like a theme or narrative
Yeah, like
or
they have a narrative that
voice
they
that
have
they
to push.
stick to.
Yeah, they have like a narrative that they have to push, and
Mm.
we may not get the complete picture. So that's when I kind of realized, right? I was just like, I definitely don't know enough. There's definitely a lot of room that, I have to improve and grow and things of that nature. But a lot of people have slowly started coming to me for analysis and predictions and my thoughts on things. And I very happily give it because there's not a single corporation, there's not a single paycheck I'm getting for it, there's not a government, there's not like me lying to anyone in any capacity is not going to benefit me. The only thing that will benefit everyone collectively, including me, is me telling the truth and what I truly think, because it will help us all understand what's going on without any narratives or propaganda being pushed.
I love what you do. That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm
That
trying
is
my best.
no, this is great because I like talking with people who um are passionate about like zooming out for the big picture. And because even with what's going on in Palestine, honestly just want to know what was going on. And I did the research myself, and it wasn't hard to find, which was surprising. But the fact that I didn't know about it also surprised me. And it's very humbling, very scary, and very tragic on how casual life is disregarded and how easy people can be distracted. Because all this stuff is happening in everyone's sight. Like it's not even really hidden. It's just like there's a lot of noise in the distance or around it. People going busy with their concerts or shows or whatever. We're so distracted and caught up in our own bubbles. Like the I feel like the necessary key element of the success of all this government carnage going on requires people to be docile.
It does.
Like when I'm on the streets with the Palestine flag and my friends have their signs, they're like, "Free Palestine! Hey, what's up?" Just trying to get a conversation. spread
I've just
awareness.
water. Give me 1 second. Keep talking. I apologize.
Okay. Hello, everybody. It's just me again. Uh, what the hell is? Oh yeah. So you get people who drive by, and a lot of people are saying, "Yeah, free Palestine, all this stuff," and you do get some people who give us the middle fingers. Not as much though. The ratio is there's way more people on the side for the freedom and humanity of the Palestinian people who are going through the suffering. I would say the ratio, honestly, on the streets doing all this is, I would say 10-3. 10 in favor for Palestine, 3 in favor for the genocide. And but there is double that amount of people who are silent. And I feel that hurts the most. Because I heard this or I read it, I forgot where, but like the elephant is going to squish the mouse, and the mouse is like, no, don't squish me, don't squish me. If you run in, try and save the mouse, you're siding with the mouse for the reason that it's going to be killed. Or you could be cheering for the elephant, like, hey, kill that thing, it's going to be awesome. You're siding with the cruel action of the elephant. Elephant don't eat mice, they don't need to kill it. But if you're on the sideline being silent, not doing anything, who does that help? I mean, the elephant is still going to squish the mouse, but you being silent, is it going to save the mouse? No. So I'm very blessed to have you on my channel and talk about these, because in the nerdy world that I'm a part of, which could be similar to people who probably are in the club scene world, or people in the sports world, or any type of thing we take time out of our busy schedule to immerse ourselves in. It's kind of this, and this is what I was talking in the previous episode of my podcast. It's kind of dangerous in the sense that we're alienating ourselves from what's going on around that require our attention, because it's really, really pain. It's not right to allow people to get hurt and die, especially on our dollar. And I'm shocked that that doesn't resonate with other people. Why do you think that is, where people are silent?
You know, I'm going
And
to
then I have
bring
a
this
second
back to-
question to follow up with that.
No, of course. So I'm going to bring it back to actually an ironic story. I remember, I want to say like 5, 6 years ago, I was talking to a guy from Canada. It didn't work out. But the reason I bring up the story is he told me, he's like, I normally don't talk to American girls. And I was like, well, why is that? And he's like, well, because majority of Americans are very ignorant. And I was like, interesting. In what way? I mean, I knew we are, but I wanted to hear that answer from like a Canadian. And he's like, when you talk to people around the world, they understand like international economics, they understand politics, they understand philosophy, they understand religion, they understand history. You know what I mean? They're very well educated. Even if they don't have like the formal degrees, it's just very common knowledge to know these things, right? But in the United States, to understand these subjects, it's like people who are either very passionate about it, people who are very nerdy, people who have researched it, people who do it for a living, but it's not like commonplace, right? Like if people are going to go hang out at a restaurant or with their family and friends, or, go grab beers, or, whatever they do, right? These are not topics that come up as frequently as they should. And if they do, it's usually like the narratives that are being pushed by Western MSM, which, as we know, majority of it is propaganda that's aligned with, U.S. foreign policy. The reason I think Americans are so ignorant is not necessarily because we're all just collectively dumb and the rest of the world is just so much smarter. I think it's by design. Think about it this way. If other countries, right, if understanding history and philosophy and, religion and politics and, whatever the case may be, it's not going to hurt that country's policies. It's not going to affect anything, right? It's, if anything, it's going to help that like country collectively prepare for potentially war or sanctions or embargoes or trade deals going on with other countries. In the US, however, if it was culturally the norm to understand these things, we would have had a revolution decades ago. right? And
Mm.
so I think for us, it's almost like we're pushed to be obsessed with and I'm going to list things that you and I are probably both into comic books, right? Into makeup, into fashion, into music, into watching certain TV shows, into watching NFL and NBA and things like that. I'm not saying these things are bad, but if you make these things the epitome of your knowledge and your interests and your hobbies and what we invest most of our time into consuming, we're not going to have any time left into reading books and gaining knowledge and understanding the world and being cultured and well spoken and eloquent and being like the jack of all trades. When we all collectively become the jack of all trades and we understand how the world works and how our government is not just harming the rest of the world but doing it at the expense of us, right? Like it's oppressing us
People.
to oppress the rest of the world. There will be a revolution, there will be a social outcry, there will be, what I mean, like a dismantlement of the political infrastructure. So to keep us docile, to keep us dumb, to keep us ignorant is required for the empire to function the way that it does. And it's interesting that he said that back then, and I was very cocky. I was like, well, I'm just very smart. But in reality, I was like, but I realized over time, I was like, wait, it's interesting that I can discuss, these issues with random people from all over the world in my DMs or people from other countries. But when I tell people, oh, I'm really passionate about geopolitics and I follow trade deals and I read history and stuff, I am such an outlier. I'm almost viewed as like weird, right? Like, oh, but like it's weird what people say. They're like, but you're just a girl or you're just this or why? But why not? These are things that like it's like I know this is really big and profound and maybe I'm just like a big idealist, but I hope in the things that you and I learn and grow from when we watch podcasts, when we interview people, because we both have our own platforms, when we are tweeting, when we're reading, when we're exchanging knowledge, right? With this teeny tiny corner of American fabric that cares about human rights. I hope that we inspire someone to do something, whether it's ourselves or someone else, that allows another individual to be fed in another country, or for someone to start a revolution here, or for someone to be able to live, or for someone to be able to vote, or whatever the case may be. The thing is, we need to have knowledge, we need to be intellectual, we need to be eloquent, and we have to think beyond the confinement of American education. We have to think beyond the confinement of what we're given by Western media. And this is actually a very interesting fact about me, and I made fun of it all the time. I don't own a TV. I haven't owned a TV in years. I want to say at least 5-6 years. And, even my sister, she's my best friend. I do go watch TV with her, right? Like here and there over the weekend. We watch TV all weekend, actually, for Labor Day weekend. But I never keep one in my home. And when I tell people that, they judge me so hard. They're
Don't
like,
look at this thing.
no, I'm not judging. People judge me and they're like, but that's so weird and that's so creepy. And they look at me like I'm Amish or something. But I'm like, you know what? If I watch TV, I know myself. I'm going to get addicted and I'm going to watch all the shows and I'm going to cry and I'm going to binge watch Netflix and all the documentaries and whatever. But that's all stuff that I think Empire wants me to consume. And I think not having a TV allows me to consume things that I think are important to push, right? To push the narrative that needs to be pushed. And that's
Well, not just that.
yeah.
There's a little trick. I don't know if you know this, but the flat screen TV. I know you know what flat screen TVs are, but I usually have this thing not hooked up to the internet. Maybe it's doing it behind my back or whatever. But they have a sensor behind where if you're close, it dims or adjusts. So for that to have a sensor, it has a camera looking back at you. So when it's plugged to the internet, they could actually see you from the other side without you seeing it.
Interesting. Okay.
And there's also, I think it was like 4 years ago, they found out that through the Wi-Fi that's coming through the house, they could you know how bats hear sounds at echolocation, where it comes back and bounces and it creates an image. They could do that with Wi-Fi signals and see 3D modeling of where you are if they choose to do so, if they can. So it's that's why I leave that thing unplugged a lot. I call it my monitor just for like my work because I do a lot of video editing, right? But I do enjoy the progressing and everything, but in small increments, because I think what you do is very healthy. But all these devices, and we have updates with our phone. Hey, turn on your microphone so we could record audio so you could have a chat with someone. but also they could record your voice too. And
Right.
it could be for different things, but um, the luxuries they give us is also elements of monitoring us.
It's a double-edged sword.
So it is a
Exactly.
double-edged sword. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's weird having a peaceful Zen life like that, because
No, the happiest I ever was actually before I got into podcasting. I didn't have any social media. I didn't even have a digital footprint. Like you could Google me and I probably maybe find like, I don't know, my voting record from like 10 years ago or something, right? But like I had no digital footprint. I had no social media. People thought I was creepy because I'd be like, I don't have Instagram. I don't have Facebook. Everything's deleted, deactivated, whatever. I still didn't have a TV. And I literally wasn't even very social, and not in like a depressing weird way, but I love solitude, right? I love having space. I love having my peace. I love having my
yes, I am
quiet.
there too.
Yeah, and like just reading and just consuming things. And I went through a phase where, and this was hard for me because of all the things that people get addicted to. Music is my vice, right? I listen to tons and tons of music. But even for a little bit, I stopped listening to music and I really calmed down with it. I used to have Spotify on 24/7. That was the one app I tell people. I'm like, I can live without Netflix. I can live without Instagram. I don't care if I'm homeless. I need Spotify. I don't care if there's a nuclear war. I need that, like I need it. And it's not like I was listening to like profound music, right? I was just listening to like
Yeah,
future and hip hop and like whatever. But
yeah.
I kind of feel like when I did away with the music, I did away with, I still don't have the TV, and I did away with all social media. It's the happiest I ever was. And that's why I was so reluctant to get into podcasting and to be on social media, because I was like, it's going to infiltrate my peace. But I realized if I have to infiltrate my peace and quiet to, join the information world and the social media world and have an online presence, but it will, inshallah, benefit people, help people, educate people, and not just other people, but myself. Maybe infiltrating my peace is more of an investment. That's how I look at it. Because I admit it, I wake up sometimes and I'm like, I just need to delete all my social media and just move to another country and just pretend I never existed. Because I don't like having an online presence, which sounds weird because I'm on like every app or whatever now.
Wow, that's really cool. I like that, because when I take time to myself, I just unplug. You can't even find me. Like, I'll just stay in my, I'll just draw or do like some kind of workout activity or work on a project, and I usually just isolate from everything, and I feel like I could hear my inner thoughts more. I could focus, and one thing I don't like about like binging shows as much as I'd like to, I now have to schedule a time to do that, because my problem is I lose the perception of time. So one of the cool things I really love about the spirituality and wisdom of Salah is like it's not just, all right, you gotta pray 5 times a day. It's like I don't even know what accent that was, but uh it's actually taking time for myself, and I feel like I could pace and slow things down, because I'm still adapting to the routines, and I do all my prayers in Arabic. That was really hard for me because I don't even speak Arabic, but I had to study in what it meant, because I didn't even know it was preferred just say prayers in Arabic. I just felt like, okay, well, this is a song. I want to stick to the lyrics. I feel I need that connection because I want to be closer to God, so I was like, oh, I came up with that myself, but it's good to be. But when I'm not doing that, I mean, I'm trying to do it, of course, but there are days when I reflect back on the times when I don't have that break for myself. I feel like time escapes me quicker, and I could have done more, not in the sense where I'm a workhorse, but when I say do more, I meant like I could have done more of working on myself or accomplishing something that feels rejuvenating, like finishing a task or whatnot. So um, being in that vacuum of just being like consuming all these billboards, to me, entertainment and all, an ad that pops up, a commercial, some kind of plug for something, it's a billboard. It's like I vision it as like a bunch of billboards just hitting me in the face. And that wastes a lot of time. I don't got time for that. Like, I don't even have cable. I rarely watch TV, only for my pro wrestling show. That's it.
No, and
And
there's nothing wrong with it. There's
but
nothing
it's
people
a
want
system of like constant, like, what you want to see of any story that you're a fan of. I feel like if you're watching TV with ads, or even YouTube with ads, um, a percentage of you is being treated as a marketing tool, and then the rest is the story that you want. And sometimes the story is made for the marketing tool, so you're not even getting a good story. It's just dragging on, and then you're like, whoa, 10 years it took for me to see Superman fly. Or like, man, third season they get together and they have a baby. It's like, what? It took forever. I don't know. It's just like, sometimes it is a time waster. And I think what we do is we get used to bad treatment to where it's acceptable. Kind of like once upon a time, maybe now, I don't know. I'm working on it, but I would choose the wrong women. Now, I'm not saying like, I have all these choices, but the ones I accepted were actually the ones that treated me poorly as the previous one, because I got
you're
used to a
seeing
certain
that
treatment.
pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't really in love with the person. I mean, there was love there, but the selection process was coming from a toxic comfortability that I got used to. And I feel when you're plugged into one of these things all the time, that's something that could happen, you know?
It's interesting because my sister is like the way that I'm passionate about like geopolitics and stuff like that. My sister is very obsessed with like entertainment, right? So usually when I go to her place, like, she owns like two TVs. We binge watch all these shows. And if there's a show she hasn't watched, I'm like, okay, what's wrong? Are you sick? Because, she knows like, oh, this is going on, that's going on. And I remember having this conversation with her and she actually made fun of me, right? Because that's her vice. Like that's the way that she like unplugs from the stress of the world and her job and everything. I was telling her, I was like, I think a lot of the music, the food, the media that we watch, the TV shows that we consume, even like the sports games, I think a lot of it is actually like the way that empire is trying to infiltrate like our consciousness, right? Because our subconscious actually has a lot to do with the way that we function. And so when we watch like, for example, dysfunctional relationships in TV shows or movies, or we watch like a shift in dating patterns, or like what's cool, like socioeconomic class people are buying a lot of things on Instagram, or this is trendy, that's trendy. We think it's random, right? We just think it's corporations that are just trying to make a buck, whatever. But I think it's a lot deeper than that. It's kind of like what you're talking about with video games. A lot of what we consume is actually dictating the way that we perceive the world, right, from our subconscious, and we're perceiving it in a way that empire wants us to, which is keeping us docile. So like for example, you know how they'll say things like, oh, our birth rate is really really low and we need to do X, Y, and Z. And so then we saw like the reverse of like Roe versus Wade and this and that. A lot of shows that you watch and movies that you watch, and I only know this because I very seldom do it, right? If you're watching it 24/7, you're not going to realize it. But when I watch a lot of these shows and movies or whatever with my sister, because it's so seldom, I'm like, they're really pushing like, they're getting away from like casual hookups and back to like previous gender roles. And they're pushing like having a lot of babies and having a farm and doing this and that. Why? Because the birth rates are low, right? Trending in TV, and I'm noticing those patterns. But if you're watching, if you grew up with like 90210 and the OC, and then you watch this and that, and now you're watching, I don't know what's cool, like Euphoria, The Summer I Turned Pretty, whatever, you'll notice that the way that they present the woman and the man and the relationship and the dysfunctional family and what they're buying and consuming has a lot to do with like economic and domestic policies with the US or even foreign policy. We see it all the time. And I think that's why I try to cut myself off from it. I'm not perfect, okay? Like I ate a lot of junk this weekend. I watched a lot of trash TV. I came home and listened to a lot of crappy music. But I try to minimize it compared to the average person, because a lot of what we're consuming, we think it's out of our own free will. But to be honest, a lot of these trends, right? Because we have to remember, who owns our government? It's the corporations, right? The corporations own our government. So
with how this capitalist system works,
yeah. So the
supply,
corporations
demand,
and
and feed
government are
and rich.
working together to infiltrate our subconscious. So we think we're choosing to do certain things out of our own free will, when it's honestly serving the CIA and the FBI and foreign policy, and it's making a lot of corporations richer. And what happens to us? We remain ignorant, we remain docile, we remain brainwashed. We really do need to minimize that, you know?
Because
I
they
mean,
need our energy.
they
They're
do. They
sucking
do.
it. That's the real matrix.
If we're eating all this junk food and listening to all this music and playing these video games and watching this TV and not reading for ourselves and not investing into our spirituality and our self-growth and books and things of that nature, and surrounding ourselves with beautiful, positive, amazing human beings, we hate ourselves. And when we hate ourselves, we
Mm.
have no energy, we have no love or energy to help each other. I really feel that way.
Oh, that. Mm. When are you writing your book? I'm gonna buy it.
I'll probably need a ghostwriter. I've tried writing a book so many times, and I get into the second chapter,
I
and then
know a
they're
really
like,
good
"Oh
editor.
no, I can't do
I know a
this."
good editor. She'll have your back. I'll talk to my people. Talk to your people. That was like, wow. Um, Thank you. That was great. It's so true though, because again, with everything we've been talking about today, with even tonight, with the weaponization of Islamophobia to fuel accepting cruel behaviors to get certain tasks done, of foreign policies with how they keep us that silent person when the elephant is stepping on the mouse. It's like we have a lot on our plate, and I remember the question. It's like, how would you encourage people to read into geopolitics? How, like, I wonder if people feel it's like getting out of their comfort zone or unlearning something that they thought was true but isn't. Like switch, because one of the biggest things that slowed down the empathy for the Palestinian people was being sold on the lie of October 7th. And it's like a marketing scheme, like in like if you go to grocery, like I'll just pick Target because I used to work there for like 8 years. I know what they're up to. It's like you have the entrance of the, okay, this is a square, right? You have
Right.
the entrance right here, right? It's at the side of the store, usually at the corner. And at the other corner is the seasonal section, what you really want for the season, like, ooh, Christmas lights or whatever. So you have to go through the whole store and see everything on the way there. And they also know the first thing that catches your eye is the first thing that sticks in your mind. That everything that you see afterwards, you're going to compare to the first thing you see.
Interesting. Okay.
So by the time they get to the end and then make their way back to the cashier register, they've seen all this information, all these ads. Ooh, this is all now that you'll hear this a lot. People like, well, when I go into Target, you can't just buy one thing.
Right.
It's like they already got you because of
Right.
how they systematically put things. So with selling the lies of October 7th, by the time the truth comes out, people have already bought the lie, cashed it in, accepted it. So it's like, wait, you're telling me something else happened right now? I got angry of this and this and this. I can't go back. I feel like that's the thing. So the power of advertising and getting the first thing in your mind right away, and how we're conditioned to kind of accept things at face value. I mean, no offense to TikTok, it's really fun. I'm sure it's great. I got to start on it or something, but it's this quick gratification of getting information at such a short span of time. The dopamine doesn't have time to get to your brain to make you happy. It's like we're getting used to being sold on something very quickly, and we're not happy about it. Yeah, we're addicted to getting close to it, but we're not getting that full satisfaction of like finishing a book or a chapter in 45 minutes or working on an art project for however long it takes. Then you have that gratification, or going on a hike or going on a run. I feel like there's this social condition of distraction that we're all used to. Like a lot of times, I'm even guilty of it. I'm always picking up my phone. It's like, hey, did he answer me back?
No,
Whatever.
I do the same thing. I will say this, and my sister calls me out on it. I am so addicted to my phone. And that's why I don't want to say I regret getting into podcasting. It's been a journey, and inshallah,
No,
I
I
think
love that I got to meet you. I wouldn't have
yeah,
this
of
wouldn't have
course.
happened if you
But
did not.
ever since I got into podcasting and now I have all these apps, I admit it. I'm the kind of person where I post something and I'll look like 20 times, like, did someone like it? Blah, blah. And then I'm like, wow, I'm just like the rest of them. I need that cheap
Hmm.
dopamine hit, right? So that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like these apps, the shows, everything that we're consuming, bringing it back to Islam, it keeps us attached to
Hmm.
dunya, right? Like
Yes.
capitalism and empire is very intrinsically tied to dunya. And I think that's why when a lot of people look at
Hmm.
Palestinians and the strength of people who are suffering in the Muslim world and they're like, where do they get this strength and this conviction? It's because when you no longer are fixated on tangible things, which it sounds like both you and I do need to work on, but when you're no longer, consuming and attached to these tangible things, you focus on deen, right? Deen is
Hmm.
like the
Yes.
spiritual world, the
Oh,
inner
the
world.
dean is
And
good.
that's the truth. I think to me, deen is the truth. Dunya to me is the illusion. And we always have to remind ourselves of that every day. Because I think
Mm.
like while we're going through life and we're experiencing dunya, we have these gut reactions like, oh, I can't believe this happened. And I watched the show and then this person did this and that happened. And then this person didn't like this. And it's very like, we're so attached, right? We have that attachment. When you take away all those attachments and you just focus on your soul, your connection to God, being a good human being, good deeds, knowledge, it changes like the entire trajectory of your life. And can you find that without Islam? Absolutely. I hope, inshallah, everyone does. But does Islam make it so much easier? Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. It's given me so much peace.
Same here. It's helped me with a bunch of stuff, and I got like ADHD issues and whatever. It's brought me a clarity and a comfortability of being closer to God. And I say God a lot for my Western people, because someone asked me, it's like, oh, aren't they different? Because it's a different word. I was like, no, it's just all right. I always explain it this way. We're talking about God, the God. It's like, but I like God. You like God. I was like, no, it's God. It's the God. And I was like, here, let me break it down for you. God, Allah. Batman, the Batman. Who am I talking about? It's like, and then people are like, oh, I get it now. So, anyways, yeah. Where was it going with that? Oh man. Yeah, Dean is good. But yeah. It's give oh yeah. Islam has brought me closer to God and more of my meaning of what I have to work on. And I've never had that self reflection before, other than like martial arts, which I got a lot of spirituality and training from. Crafting my art as an artist and stuff. Those are things that you do. Like in like I studied a lot of kung fu for 14 years. And there's a lost art when people focus just on the fighting, the competitive part of it. Then the art is lost. The art is the meaning. That's something you could apply to your life. And it's just the fighting and all this stuff. And I miss that because I went to a very traditional kung fu school where we learned history, we had to write papers, and
Wow.
we had to do performances, and we also had to do the sparring thing, and we had to do conditioning. So you don't get that anymore. And that's the old traditional Chinese style of, or the traditional cultural way of teaching it. Now it's like, come here, do a couple things, get a belt, and it's all very commercial, right? And whatever. So I really treasured that ability because I was like, okay, getting the full art form, I learned the meaning behind it. So what I learned what kung fu means, kung means working, fu means man, man as in human being, person. Okay, it's not like gender specific. So working man is what kung fu is about, meaning you have strong kung fu if you're doing a task that betters yourself as a person, and you learn focus, discipline. You get dopamine levels of accomplishing a task and testing yourself. That's kung fu. So let's say you don't do the kung fu martial arts that I do. Let's say the reading you do and applying it to your journalism. That's an action. That's something that you're working at, a craft. And by perfecting that craft, in return, you perfect yourself as an individual and you become a better person. That is what Kung Fu is about. And for spirituality and life and everything, morality, Islam is like, it's been doing that for me. Because uh, when we, do Ramadan, we're encouraged to focus on, reading, learning, and we go through this fast to cleanse ourselves, but also discipline ourselves. So there's a lot of reward after it. So then at the end of the month, I've done 2 Ramadans, no problem. I was worried, but uh, each Ramadan, I feel better and stronger and more at peace and more centered. And I have deep revelations, even more so. And it's by cutting off bad habits and focusing on what really matters. And the as far as holidays go and everything, it's like the one that sticks out to me. I look forward to it now more and more because it's something that requires uh, participation on such a great level for a whole month. Whereas other holidays I could just show up, eat, and buy someone a present. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, and then it's done. But the actual craft of working on yourself has been so profound to me. It's been changing my life. I wish I took Shahada sooner, but here I am, and my whole heart's into it. So it's just
No,
been the most beautiful
don't
thing. And
feel that way though.
no, I don't. It's just a surface level thing. But yeah, you're right. I don't feel that way I hope the world, if they're Islam, if they're Muslim or not, they understand the true meaning of what it is. Because I understand the beauty of other holidays, whether I practice it or not. Well, I don't practice it. I got my thing now, but I see the merit and the idea and the theme. And this is something that's been very fruitful and making me a better person. And subhanallah, I'm very happy it's in my life. And I just hope people can see how beautiful Islam really is. They don't have to be a part of it. I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm all about people's free journey, on whatever brings them closer to God and being a good person. It's just that at least I hope you could appreciate it from afar for what it is rather than hate it for what it is not. So,
Oh, very profound. Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's a good way to put it. I think that's a very strong message, spreading Islam should be through dawa, which is like, knowledge and discourse. It should be through adab, which is etiquette. It should be through our
Mm.
manners. We should be ambassadors of our faith, like I said earlier. By no means does anyone have to convert, but I agree. I think to humanize the religion would be beneficial for Muslims and non-Muslims alike because anytime we fight amongst each other over religion, race, socioeconomic class, political ideology, it's a form of conquer and divide. Conquer and divide doesn't serve
Mm.
us, it serves empire, and we have to remember that.
Oh, the theme of this episode that we get to, I guess. Ah, wow. So, we're not gonna wrap it up real quick, but we are in the wrap up mode. Um, there's another theme we want to talk about, which is uh, you have this goal of having your own platform because you're on Muslim Street. You're
Yes.
on the
Pro-pilled, yes.
pro pill. Sorry,
Yeah, it's
God bless
okay.
you guys on the pro pill. I'm having issues here with the pro pill.
Yeah,
No, but not the pro pill. Just the words.
yeah.
Anyways, y'all know me. Uh, but there's no Lotus Incorporated or whatever, or
Yes,
the
and this is
Heena platform.
actually
Why
this
is
is a
that?
privilege. This is a privilege for you because this is the first time this is being announced publicly. So this
We
is
had like
my
10 viewers.
I know, I know. I haven't officially announced it. I don't want to go into the negatives or the drama or anything of that nature, but when I first got into podcasting, I really believed in the dream and the vision. And each platform that I've been on has been beneficial for me and the public in many ways. But I've kind of realized I'm coming into my own. I'm finding my own interview style, content that I'm interested in educating, my audience with. There's a certain direction I'd like to go, towards. I've realized I like focusing on religion, geopolitics. I like commenting on like, culture and human rights and things of that nature. And I've kind of realized when I started out doing this, I always thought I'd have to belong to another platform. I didn't think it was something I could do on my own.
Mm.
I started out very insecure. I'll be candid. And I want to share that. So if there's other people out there that are like, oh, I want to do podcasting, but I don't know what it takes. I was in, that individual's exact same shoes. I really doubted myself. And this entire time I was just like, I don't think I have what it takes to have a platform. I don't think I have what it takes to have my own podcast. I don't know if I'm a good speaker or if my content is worthy or if I'm not a scholar. And I doubted myself on so many different levels. But I've realized the more and more I do this and the more I engage with people and the more, I don't want to say the more followers I get, the more people I exchange ideas and knowledge with. Because just as much as people have followed me and learned and grown from me, I have just as much learned and grown from them, and I try to be very inclusive and I try to promote other people's platforms and accounts just as much as I encourage other people to do mine. But I've just come to this point where I've realized that podcasting does not, especially in the political world in general, it doesn't have enough women. And I think sometimes women are kind of viewed as, how can I put this diplomatically? Women
Objects.
are, yes. I think women are sometimes objectified or their labor and content is used, or sometimes people fixate too much maybe on their aesthetics or something of that nature. And that's all part of human nature. I'm not saying anyone's above it or anything of that nature, but I've kind of realized that I've grown enough and understood enough and become confident enough to know that I do have something to offer the world. And there's a lot of content that I would love to create and make. And without full freedom and autonomy, I wouldn't have it. And so inshallah, I'm in the works of potentially launching something of my own. I don't have a time frame. I'm just now working out like the background and having meetings and things of that nature. But I would love to launch within the next few weeks, the next few months, however long it takes. And I want to make it very heavily focused on interviews. I want it to be not just a podcast, to be candid. I would love for it be like a form of media, right? Like a form of journalism. So something that would, I don't want to say like rivals CNN or Al Jazeera, but I have a big vision and I want it to incorporate a lot of people like me who are independent, who don't want to be state
Rival
sponsored.
them.
Yeah, who don't want to have like MSM, who don't want to deal with like, being paid by certain lobbyists or corporations or governments to push a certain narrative. I think journalism should always be independent. It should be for the people. It should be by the people. It should be, conducive to the collective. It should be beneficial to advocate for human rights. And, I always wanted to kind of figure out where I fit into this world. I'm so humbled that I got into podcasting. I'm so humbled that I was pushed into it because I'm realizing that whatever we all tell ourselves we can't do, we can do, and we can do so much more than that. I think to undermine our strengths and our rationale, our intellect, our passions, our gifts, our talents, to undermine that isn't just undermining ourselves as individuals. Not only is it a disservice to the collective, I think it's honestly disrespectful to Allah, right? I really do. If we're given so many tools and resources and talents and passions, I think we owe it to the collective to do something about it. And so I'm finding my little path, I think, in the fabric of human change and pushing humanity to be better, to grow, and to do things that help the next generation be better than what we were. I'm finding that path, and I hope my platform is able to do that. So I want to start out with podcasting, but I want to not initially, but I want to over time, expand it to media as a whole. I think the journalism that I'm looking for, I think you asked earlier, how can people keep up with geopolitics? There's a multitude of websites. There's a multitude of media companies. There's Democracy Now, there's Mint Press, there's Breakthrough News, the list goes on and on. But I think what I'm quite looking for is a little bit of spirituality, a little bit of social commentary, a little bit of geopolitics, and a little bit of like, how can we improve as a collective? How are we going to have a revolution? It's not just political, right? It's not just religious. It's it's a multitude, it's a kaleidoscope of different components. And even if we all have different perspectives and viewpoints, it all always has to do with the same components at the end of the day. So I really want to have my platform kind of bring that to the world. I haven't found it yet. So I'm in the chapter of creation in my life.
That's beautiful. Wow. Have you ever heard of the hip hop godfather or father, founding father, one of them, Gil Scott Heron?
No, I haven't.
All right, he's a wonderful spoken word artist. Back in, I love this guy. He's one of my favorite artists of all time. He did a lot of spoken word. He has a beautiful voice. He would sing songs, and he was very political in what's going on. And you'll hear his songs, you'll be floored. And because back in the day, hip hop was journalism for the streets because they left a lot of their stories out of the mainstream. Now it's rarely journalism. You have
You
to
still
find those
listen to
artists.
some Gangstar, Black Star, Dead Prez. I know what you're talking about. I'm a
All
hip hop
right, all
fan.
right.
I got
I
that
don't know,
Spotify.
but
Okay.
the biggest one, in my opinion, critically, is they're not that famous because they hit everything on the nose. They're called the perceptionists with Afrobatic, I think that's his name, and Mr. Liff. They covered a lot of stuff around George Bush's presidency, where those harder albums are not even on Spotify. They're like, we're
Oh
not
yeah.
even putting that there. That's like, anyways. Gil Scott Heron has a song that's popular, and you probably commercially heard it misused all the time, where he said the revolution will not be televised. And so
Right.
the point of that is that uh, news media isn't really news. Even Fox News, when they were being sued like 10 years ago or something for some misinformation they got in trouble with, their defense was like, "What? We're actually entertainment. We're not news. So that's not on us." It's like, oh, and still to this day, the most trusted news source in America, Trump or whatever. So, uh, the revolution will not be televised because the process of television is already corrupted. It's also a propaganda tool. So you will never see the revolution because his whole song was like the revolution is going to be real. It's going to be by action, by people's decisions. And then there was another song by an unknown art. Well, well, yeah, she's not popular, but independent artist, a female rapper. I forget her name. I'm sorry. I'll find it and I'll make a whole podcast about it. I promise. Um, she has a song that was a callback saying the revolution, your revolution, talking to men, will not happen between these thighs. You know, the whole like
Oh, okay. Yeah,
nitty
yeah, yeah.
gritty. So she does a whole song about the male and female dating situations and toxicity. And then her song was like the revolution, which is, you know, love making. But her song was like the love is going to be in the heart. That's where you want to be, not down there in here. So it's like, I forgot where I went with that, but hearing you talk and getting this wonderful opportunity to have you on my channel and talk about this stuff, which I hope we could do some more later, is I believe you're on a wonderful path because even before we started talking, I was just seeing the stuff you posted, um, your the topics you were tackling, very straightforward, no BS, no being around the bush, just solid, like not wasting time, but also being eloquently specific. I was like, this is a journalist. This is a real life Lois Lane, you know? So hearing what you hope to do, I am very confident you will do it, inshallah. Definitely.
Inshallah.
You
No,
just
that means a
gotta
lot.
you just
Thank
gotta
you.
find the tools, and you know, you got my support, you know? And because I think what you're doing is great. You've done great for my channel by blessing me with your um insight, your intelligence, your knowledge, and I think the world needs more of you.
Well, no, thank you. I'm very humbled to be on. I think you are doing big, incredible things. I very selective with people that I collaborate with,
I'm
and
surprised because I have a
yeah,
lot of poop on my channel,
yeah, no, no,
like a
I'm
lot of
very
video game stuff, and
selective.
like
I'm
I'm
learning.
crazy.
No, I'm learning. I think before I used to hop on every like opportunity
Beautiful
I get
poop, by the
because
way.
yeah, because every time I get an opportunity, I think, oh, like I'm a nobody, and you have to take everything you get. But I think as you start growing and you start understanding and realizing, some people function based off of ego, some people are just chasing fame, some people are just using political ideology as kind of like a vehicle for like the wrong things. Some people have bad intentions. And then there are people who are very genuinely dedicated to the cause. They're not in it for anything beyond helping others. I think that's the number one thing that I look for. I think you are, helping a multitude of people, you're educating a multitude of people, you're platforming the right issues, you're focusing on the right things. So, inshallah, I hope your platform continues to grow in whatever capacity I can help. I would be humbled too. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you. So I'm blessed. So I have you're on Facebook,
Correct.
Twitter, also known as X, and Instagram. Those
Yep.
are
And,
the
and
main.
TikTok, I'm not as active on it, but I'm trying to be cool and hip like the rest of the world.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I'm with you there. I'm on it and I'm like still figuring it out. I'm like, what's going
Yeah.
on? So yeah, I have the 3 links of how people can find you in the description of this video here. I also have a link to the Muslim Street, the one where you recommended I check out, where you are talking to 2 other sisters about
Yes. That's my favorite episode, actually.
yes.
Yeah.
I recommend everyone who's watching this podcast to check out that link in the description below. I also have this playlist on my channel called The Must Watch. That's where I put things I think other people should check out for multiple reasons. I put it there so you can find it on my channel too. But if it's not there for whatever reason, check out the description of that podcast episode for the Muslim Street. That means so much to you. So y'all can check it out. I had a great time watching it. And I like hearing from our sisters in the Islamic, in our Muslim sisters speak, essentially the truth that breaks all the misconceptions of it pretty much dismantles Islamophobia, in my opinion. And I think we need more of that, especially from our sisters.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think women are very, very important to revolutionary discourse in Islam, especially, but even outside of it. So I think women should be treated not just as equals, but maybe even, I don't know if I'm reaching, but I think women should be put on a pedestal when it comes to discussing revolutionary discourse, because there's certain things that women do and say and the way they go about it that men can't. And men have been at the forefront of it for so long. I think the missing link is honestly amplifying female voices, and I don't say that out of bias. I say that because when you don't have both components, it's so much harder to move forward. It's time to have women in the mix for sure.
No, I agree, because this is, everyone's saying this is a man-made world. It's quite true. Like even growing up, I was treated way more like a prince than my sisters. My sisters had to go through fire and like nails on the ground to be acceptable. And it's like, dang, that's harsh, but I was being like all pampered. But yeah, you see that in society and a lot of stuff. And another thing I love about Islam is how much we take care of the women, how we like there's another misconception is like how the men beat the women and all that. I was like, no, that's haram.
That's culture.
Horrible.
If someone says
that's
culture. Asian culture or Middle Eastern culture, I'll agree. But if someone says it's religion, no, it's absolutely not. It happens.
Yes, and then they're combining the two to hate it more.
Right. Exactly.
So, again, that like fictional caricature satire that's like all false. It's like because I feel more closer to finding a loving relation. I hope so. I'm a romantic, right? I know polygamy is permissible, but it's not my thing. Like in America, I'm free to own a gun. I don't. It's not my thing. But the fact that a woman who is a Muslim woman who chooses to be with me, I know she's choosing to love me because we both have Allah. She doesn't need me. It's really, if we're on that same spiritual understanding and path, it's really fully accepting each other with like no shadows of doubt. And that's pretty intense, and that's new for me. And I just love that whole like that faith system. So I hope things work out. But that's another beautiful thing, how women are I don't think oppressed
No, I
spiritually.
think
They're
women are
just
so liberated, I think.
regarded
Yes.
beautifully, respectfully, and I love that about it too. And you, sister, having your platform, I look forward to more of that.
Inshallah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I appreciate you.
Excellent, thank you. So I guess we're gonna call it a bit ado. Anything you wanna say or close out with, or
Yeah, absolutely. This is my message for anyone who's on the fence, who doesn't have confidence, who has passions, who thinks it's too late to start, too late to find love, too late to restart your career, too late to do anything. It's never too late. I think time is an illusion. It's it's an extension of dunya. When you have deen, when you have faith, when you have spirit, you can do anything. You can change the world. You can change the course of humanity. You can overcome all the oppression, the imperialism, the capitalism, all the terrible things we see in life. But you have to make that decision first. So as long as you decide that, as long as you have conviction, I think you will be able to accomplish anything that you want. I am an absolute idealist, and I think we'd be a lot further as humanity if we all collectively thought like that. I'm very biased in my opinion.
rightfully so. Well, thank you so much for being on my channel, and thank you all who came through to see this live and chit chat in the live chat. I appreciate you, and thank you for watching this replay. Like and subscribe, and as soon as the platform happens for Heena Lotus, definitely like and subscribe and support her. And much love, God bless. We'll see you all next time.